Okay, so I'm Ben Domain. I'm the data analytics lead here with me. And so I'm just going to talk to you about data analytics and what you can do to break into this field. So a bit about myself. I'm an infantry officer. So for those of you that are in the military, you know that doesn't lend itself to any specialization particularly, but I did spend some time as a signals officer. I was 11 years in the Army, and the latter part of my time was in data analytics, specifically workforce analytics. But veterans are very, very well suited to this trade, and that's kind of what I'll be talking to you about today. So I want to introduce you to the field of data analytics. I want to explain to you what we're offering veterans to break into this field, and also not just veterans, but veteran spouses and immediate family. And also want to tell you why veterans are well suited to this field and showcase a bit of a portion of this course. So while we're going through this, if you just reply on the chat, just tell us a bit about yourself. Are you a veteran or a student? Or are you just interested in data analytics in general? This isn't just for veterans, by the way. And how did you hear about us? That'd be great. Okay, so why are we talking about data analytics? Why do you constantly hear about AI and machine learning and data analytics related things? Well, there's four major reasons for this. So firstly, the amount of data that we collect at the moment is insane. So up until from the dawn of writing until 2013, it's estimated that around 5 exabytes of data were collected. And we collect that same amount every day. That was obviously enabled by data storage, cheap data storage, because in 1967 it would have cost $1 million for just 1 megabyte of hard drive space. And the comparative cost of that is 2 cents now. Processing power is what we need to actually process and analyze these large amounts of data. And to put that in context, an Apple iPhone 5 has 2.7 times more processing power than the fastest supercomputer in the 1980s, the Cray 2 supercomputer. And then finally, statistics and programmatic methods is what enable us to actually make value of this data. So what is data analytics? It's quite, it's not very well defined if you do a random search online. So I'm making it simple here with this definition. It's transforming raw data into insights which enable decision-making or increase understanding. So I'll break that down. So transforming raw data, what we're talking about is transforming data that isn't ready for analysis into a format that it is ready for analysis. So we're taking data that is unprocessed, that has missing or duplicated values, that is in the wrong type of format, and we're turning it into the right format. And in fact, that's probably the most technical part of the role, because it involves using structured query language to interact with databases, or using tools such as Power Query and Excel, or a number of tools. But effectively, that can be the hardest and most time-consuming part of a data analytics role. And then we need to enable, the point of data analysis is to enable decision-making or increase understanding. But to enable decision-making is easier than it sounds. So to enable a decision, that data analysis must arrive at the right time and in a format where it can actually enable action. So for example, there's no point finding out 6 months late finding an insight 6 months late if the time for action is already passed, and it has to be tailored to the audience in a way that they can comprehend it to make that decision. So if you think about the type of people that can actually enable decision-making or increase understanding, you realize that it's as much about the person's communication skills and problem-solving skills as it is about their technical skills. So we break this down in the course into 4 very key and easy to understand areas: defining what the problem is, transforming the data so that it's able to be analyzed, analyzing the data, and then subsequently communicating it. So this is a way that I like to explain our approach to data analytics. These are 3 key areas of what makes a good data analyst. So on the left, you have the attributes, the soft skills. In the middle, you have the some of the hard skills. And on the right, you have the tools and the specific programming ability that a data analyst needs. Now, you'll find a lot of content online focused on the right. They're telling you that, for example, if you learn Power BI, if you learn Tableau, if you learn advanced Excel skills, that will make you a data analyst. But that's not going to work 100%, because just knowing how to use something doesn't tell you why you're using it. It doesn't teach you how to ask the right questions of it and use it appropriately. If you just focus on the tools, you'll just become an expert in a tool. You won't actually help people solve a problem. So what we're purporting is that we start from the left. So we take people with the right attributes, veterans. So people that can pick up new skills quickly, people that can communicate, people that during their careers have been put on the spot, who can think quickly and can ask the right questions. And then we teach them skills, and we teach, and these are skills that 100% can be taught. And while they're learning those skills, they pick up the appropriate knowledge in the tools. But the point that I'm making here is it's not about the tools, and it's very easy to become intimidated by the amount of tools that you might think you need to know. The reality is you cannot know all of the tools. You cannot be an expert in all of them. What you need to be able to do is solve problems at the end of the day. So the actual course that we have, it's teaching exploratory and explanatory analysis. It's teaching you how to take data, transform it, and then ask questions of it and manipulate it into different segments, and then question those segments to get further answers. Sounds complicated, but it's really quite intuitive. And we use quite basic but powerful statistics to look at that data and find significance. And the tools that we do teach in the course is advanced use of Excel, Microsoft Power BI, and we introduce some scripting in Python and R, but at a pretty basic level. And we have a SQL course, apologies, it's actually launching in the next month. So let's put these skills in context. So this is a really useful diagram that explains the hierarchy of needs that an organization might have for data science. So the main statement of this pyramid is to say that while AI and deep learning is all well and good, and you'll see that at the top of the pyramid, every base needs to be in place to enable this. So you cannot conduct AI and deep learning unless you have the right data, and unless that data is in the right format to enable those tools. So this is all to say, not every problem is a machine learning or an AI problem. In fact, actually few problems fit into that category. The majority of value can be found in the center of the pyramid, and that's where the data analyst sits. The data analyst cannot tell scientifically whether this is the cause of that. However, they can provide a quick answer in enough time to enable a decision. So we're talking about an 80% solution that arrives on time, that gives enough information for people to pivot and for people to make changes to their business. So this is I guess a bit of a point. So there's three characters here. If you take a look and think about which profile you think is best suited to a data analyst, and just type in on the comments which one you think, and I'll come back to that later. Okay, so now I'm just going to showcase a bit of the course. So it's just to get you a little bit excited about what the course offers, and just to demystify it a little bit as well. Make sure that you realize that if you can understand what I'm talking about here, you'll be absolutely fine. Right, so visualization. So visualization can be mistaken for just making our data look pretty. Some people think that visualization is just taking a table of data and then making that look nicer. But actually, visualization changes the way we absorb data, because we absorb visual data through our spatial memory. So it's like a fast track into our understanding of something. It's what's called pre-attentive processing. We're actually processing it before we even realize we're processing it. So it's not just a parlor trick. It's actually really useful for our understanding. So let's talk about pre-attentive features. So pre-attentive features are visual aspects that are processed in our spatial memory very, very fast in less than 500 milliseconds. And so these features can be a really powerful tool that we use in visualizations to draw attention to the most important elements of our visualizations. So here's some example: size, contrast, color, length, etc. But if you're in the military background, you might recognize this from why things are seen, or like a camouflage lesson. It's effectively the same thing. So here's a demonstration of a pre-attentive feature for you. So if you were to attempt to count the number of threes in this 10 by 10 grid, so this would clearly take you some time. What if you're looking at the same grid? It's far easier for you to count the 13 threes, but nothing has changed here apart from the color. So the threes are in red and the rest of the numbers are in a dark gray. If we look at it a different way, now we can see the colors are in a light blue, whereas the threes are in red, and it's not quite as easy to read. So it's not just the use of color, it's the specific use of specific colors that make this interesting. Now, here's another pre-attentive feature, which is size, and you can see that this is almost even easier to read than the others. So that's a demonstration of how powerful pre-attentive features are. So now that we know how to use them, should we just go ahead and load our visualizations with as many of them as possible? Well, the answer is no, because if we do that, it will result in something called cognitive load. So that's where the amount of effort required is not worth the cost to process your visualization. So if you've been in a meeting before and someone has presented you a very intense slide, it's not that you couldn't possibly read that slide if you'd spent 10 minutes analyzing it from left to right. It's just that the effort required creates a little switch that says no. So that's what we're talking about here. It's not that it's not possible for you to read it. It's just that the cognitive load, it just makes your brain switch off. So the more pre-attentive features that we use, the more at risk we are of creating cognitive load. So the point is, we should use pre-attentive features to highlight the most important part of our visualizations. So generally speaking, when building visualizations, we need to ask three questions. So who is the audience of your visualization? Think about your actual client or customer. What's their ability to process information? What's their appetite? So there's no point presenting them a really complex visualization if in fact that's not their preference. So what do you actually want your audience to take away from your visualization? If they don't walk away taking that from your visualization, then your visualization hasn't worked. And finally, what is the best way to get your visualization across? Your point across. You might be tempted to build one complex visualization, but actually maybe the best way to do it is with a series of less complex visualizations. So it is your responsibility with any visualizations to convey the whole context of the analysis that you've created, and not just your finding, because that can result in a very skewed perception of your analysis. So there's two elements that always get right in your visualizations: color and clutter. So we want to use color appropriately, and we want to avoid clutter. So why is color so important? Well, colorful actually taps into something very powerful, which is our psychological associations with color. For example, red with danger. And it's probably one of the most powerful pre-attentive features. So you should use color to tie different visualizations together, or to draw attention to a specific element. And you should really be careful about using highly saturated colors sparingly. You should be careful about using highly saturated colors too often. Generally try to use low saturated color palettes. And there's actually a website called Color Brewer, which can offer you some good ideas, but most packages come with the ability to change to a low saturated color palette. So clutter, what is clutter? Clutter are unnecessary elements in your visualizations. So clutters are more, they can also include elements that aren't completely unnecessary, but they just take up too much space. So you have to ask yourself, is this element necessary in my visualization? And if possible, you remove it. Because every piece of, like I said, every piece of clutter in your visualization is risking your audience not being able to understand the central point of your visualization. So let's look at a bad example of a visualization. And if people feel free to comment and explain, have a look at why you think this is a bad visualization. So this is a City of London. This is the City of London dashboard. So I'll go on. Did anyone coming through?
Yeah, no. Anne's just joined us. She's been in this. She's currently still serving 23 years, and then Max just replied, 23 years. That's one very good innings.
Okay. So yeah, if you just joined, what I'm doing is I'm demonstrating a bit of the course, and I'm talking about visualization and how important it is in communicating the results of data analytics. And specifically, I'm now looking at example of poor visualization, and that's this dashboard here. So the biggest thing that sticks out from this is the amount of clutter on this dashboard. Not everything on this dashboard is probably necessary for your average London citizen, or if it is, it should have been put in a series of pages so that it didn't present the user with so much information. The second is the use of color, and that's because they've confused the color theme here. So you've got bike sharing over here that uses a shade of green through to darker green, and yet over here you've got green through to red. So it's inconsistent. And then things like the train line status. Well, yes, while every tube line has a different color, it's maybe not necessary to have it on this particular visualization because it's just too much going on here. So let me show you a good visualization. So Tableau is one of the market-leading visualization tools, and they run a competition. And this particular visualization won a competition with Tableau. What it's showing people is the ability for them to select their age and find out as basically their percentile rank. How much older are they than all Americans, and then filter it by their gender. So what's good about this, you can see that color is used to tie together the most important information. So you is in blue, and then 34, that's your age. And then this blue text is showing you how much older you are from 45% of Americans. And then this column that represents your age is highlighted blue. So that makes it very easy for the audience to grasp this. And then if you look at this graph, you can see there's literally nothing on this graph that isn't necessary. It's everything here has a purpose, and you can see the color palette is quite easy on the eye. It's a low saturated color palette. So this is the difference between the previous visualization and this one. It's not that you couldn't read that City of London dashboard. It's just that this is way more likely to make your point to the audience, and that is why it's an important and crucial part of data analytics. So there's two things that you should definitely avoid. One of them is pie charts, and the other one is 3D charts. And that's because they distort our understanding of images. So here's the worst of both worlds. So it's a 3D pie chart. So here it's very difficult. So like if you think about the purpose of a pie chart, it's for you to understand the different proportions of a whole. But actually, we're not very good as humans at processing angles, which means that pie charts are problematic. And then here it's a 3D chart. So it's very difficult to actually tell which segment is bigger than the other. And if you look on the right, that's the same data shown in a bar chart. And you can see how much clearer that is. All right, so we're on to the next part of the course. So this is something that is very important for data analytics. It's teaching you to watch out for misleading visualizations and statistics. So why do you need to do this? Well, effectively, they give the use of statistics in the media a bad rap because it helps people, it contributes to people losing trust with the use of data. Because what happens is they are presented a misleading statistic and they just decide not to trust any statistic. The fact is, a lot of the time things are just presented misleadingly, and it's pretty easy to spot a misleading statistic. So this should take you through a few of the common ones to help you from either presenting statistics misleadingly and also for you to be able to spot some of the more obvious ones. So here's the first example. So this is a theoretical situation. This is the US's percentage of gross domestic product growth from 2016 to 2018. shown in a column chart. And let's just say theoretically, well, in fact, President Trump did take office in 2017. And let's just say theoretically, the Republicans are making a great deal of how much GDP has grown between 17 and 18. And it does, in fact, look to have grown a lot. But can anyone notice what's wrong with this? I'll let that come through. Basically, what's wrong with it is the axis is not set to 0. It starts at 1.4%. This gives a really disproportionate view of this growth. This is what it actually looks like if it's set to 0. So what you can do is make sure that you're, when you're receiving a visualization, that it is set to 0. Or just ask yourself this question: is this graph in proportion? But that's not to say there's definitely scenarios though where you can set the axis to something other than 0. It's just that there must be a really good reason for you to do so, and you have to explain it. So this comes on to the second misrepresentation. So if you're looking at this graph, you might ask yourself, why am I only being shown 3 years of GDP growth? And that's because a common misrepresentation is not to show the data in context. So here's some more context for the same data. And this shows that, yes, while GDP growth did increase from 2017 to 18, that over President Obama's preceding 9-year term, it also grew in a very similar fashion from 2013 to 15. So it almost looks like a cycle now, and it really means that this growth is nothing particularly special. So the solution is, if you're presented something, or if you are presenting something, make sure to explain the wider context before narrowing down into your specific finding. So the third misrepresentation is not normalizing the data. By normalize, what we mean is bring data into the same type of measurements so that you can compare them. So for example, this is company X and the number of males and females that have left that company in a financial year. So 350 males have resigned and 200 females have resigned. So let's just say if the company were just to look at this and determine that their male retention is worse, what would be the problem with that? So the problem here is the data is not normalized. We don't know how many males there are in company X. We don't know how many females there are in company X. What we actually need is the percentage of males and females that have resigned. And when you look at that, 35% of females have resigned and 26% of males have resigned. So actually, this company might have a female retention problem. So misrepresentation number 4 is percentage difference versus percentage points. So again, we're back to our scenario, and the Republicans are saying that GDP growth increased 20%. And that's correct, because what happened is it increased 0.5%, and 0.5% is 20% of 2.4%. So there was a 20% increase in the GDP growth. But what would the Democrats say? Democrats would say that GDP growth has increased by 0.5%. That's also correct. It has increased by 0.5 percentage point. This is the difference between percentage points and percentage increase. So you got to remember that if you hear percentage increase, put that into context of a percentage point, because it can be very misleading when you hear about a 200% increase in something that actually only went up from 2% to 4%. And then misrepresentation number 6 is presenting correlation as causation. So what's correlation? Correlation is how two variables are related to one another. For example, height is correlated with weight. It says that if you're taller, then generally you will weigh more. And that's pretty useful. But if you were to say that height was caused by weight, that the reason that you're tall is because you weigh more, then you'd be incorrect. That is a completely different issue. But that doesn't mean that correlation isn't useful. It's really useful to know that if you weigh more, it's not that useful, but it could be useful to know that if you weigh more, that you're going to be taller. But it just means that it's not describing causation. So if you hear people touting around that correlation is not causation, just make sure they understand that correlation is actually important and they're not just trying to show off.
Davey John.
Oh, great. Okay, so Dave, you joined at the end, but this is a bit about what we are as a company. So what we do is we provide veterans the opportunity to train in tech, and we also are on a mission to solve underemployment. By underemployment, what we're talking about are people that aren't being used to their full potential, people that are in a job where they feel like they're being overtaken by technology and they don't have the power to change it. What we're trying to do is enable businesses to identify those people, train them, and redeploy them inside their own business rather than looking external for talent. So that's it. So effectively, what I wanted to get across to you is that we're offering this free data analytics course for veterans, and the data analytics itself is an exciting opportunity. And I think I can come back to this one here, and just I asked that question. Oh, I asked that question of which veteran profile would make the best data analyst? And so if you haven't answered that question, you can do that now. Did anyone come back?
They're typing right now.
They're typing. We've got Nate from the United States have joined us. Davey from, I don't even know how to say that.
Yoki?
No,
Great.
I don't even know what that is. Anne from Brisbane, Jorge from Hamilton, Matt from London. Yeah, so we've got a fair few. Some people are saying apologies. Some people are just.
That's okay. Right. So the point I was making here is there's three characters. On the left, you have Peter, highly creative, not great with digital detail, people focused, loves presenting. And on the right, you've got John, technical degree, doesn't like getting up in front of people, prefers perfection. He's a perfectionist, loves proving other people wrong, and can list long numbers from memory, and is very process driven. And then in the center, you've got Sandy, who's a bit of an all-rounder, can get to the root of a problem and loves working in a team. And the point that I'm making here is people think that John is the data analyst, but actually John is not necessarily great at solving problems. What John is good at is being very technically excellent. So it's no good sitting in front of a screen and spending all of your time doing your analysis if that doesn't actually result in either a decision being made or an actual outcome. And that's where you need people like Sandy and maybe even people like Peter to get involved in technical fields and add their value. But there's definitely a place for the Johns. So if you're a John, don't take it personally. The point is that don't be intimidated by the technical knowledge that you need in data analytics, or to be honest, in any technical field. You might have a lot to bring to the party with your other soft skills as well. So that's it, guys. I know if you've joined late, you've probably missed the bulk of it. But hopefully that's been useful. And yeah, I'll take some questions on the chat now.
Nate, we're doing another webinar for the US side too. So even though you tuned in late, you should be able to catch it.
Yeah, did you hear that, Nate? Yeah.
Nate, did you hear that?
So we're running a webinar for the US as well tomorrow. Yeah, great.
Just if anyone has any questions, I'm happy to read them out to Ben here. Okay.
I have the first question. When does the next data analyst course?
Oh, great. Yeah, that's a good point. It actually starts on the 31st of January, but there'll be some options for late entry for about 2 weeks after that. It is a 12-week course, but it's pretty much self-paced, so you can work through it in your own time. Yep, that's it.
And what about the next sort of, one thing I wanted to let everyone know, I did write it in the chat just before, but if you didn't catch this one, you came in late, we actually recorded this, so we're happy to share obviously the link so that you can watch it in your own time. But I'll be on our platform, we have all our events. If you click on the left-hand side, there's the event tab. You'll be able to know when the next one of these are running, or all the other pathway ones. We've got a cyber one coming up. Then we've got automation coming up as well. So Nate's asking a question. How does data analytics course work with other courses such as cyber and RPA? And are there good cross-training points?
Yeah, that's a great question. It is very much compatible with both. I would so to explain robotics process automation, in case you don't know, so robotics process automation is about effectively mimicking human actions online in very simple terms. It's about automating processes, very, very mundane processes so that humans don't have to. So how that works with data analysis is that nearly on every occasion, pretty much, give or take, automation sits in the middle of data. So it's taking data and transforming it and automating that process and then delivering it in a format somewhere else. So for example, it might extract something, transform it, and it might send emails to a bunch of customers. So there's data involved in that. And so the data and automation do work very well together. Cyber, if your pathway is cyber, it won't be a wasted effort for you to learn data analytics, because if you think about say the role of a cyber defender, that person is looking for threats. So what are they looking for? They're looking for things that are outside of normal. How do you know if something's outside of normal? You have to apply some forms of statistics to it, and you have to be able to visualize it. So you would have seen potentially those fancy dashboards with loads of numbers. Yeah, they're a bit gimmicky, but effectively, how do you know if something is outside of normal if you aren't able to take that data and actually apply some analysis to it? So it will just enable you to get to maybe a little bit of the next level in detecting threats. But yeah, so they do work well together.
Perfect.
Yeah.
I've got another question here from Davey. Said, will the joining instructions be coming through with you with me, as the course access is not open yet?
Yeah. So a week out, you get an email with everything that you need to know, but effectively it's just you'll just get access, and from that point on, everything is explained in the course.
Nate said that. Awesome. Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Davey's typing here. And do you have any questions? Because I heard that you've been serving for the past 23 years, and you're still currently serving, but you're looking for an exit strategy.
In the British Australia?
Australia. Yeah. What's your interest in data analytics? And just type it.
So what did you say was the job postings for this month, Ben, for data careers?
With you with me?
No, the amount of job.
Oh, that's right. Okay, so yeah, we recently did some analysis using a platform that we have access to that looked at the number of jobs posted in Australia over the last 12 months. So to put it in perspective, there was about 350 jobs posted in robotics process automation. There was about 3,500 posted for cybersecurity analysts, and there was about 11,500 posted for data analytics. Now, remember, data analytics, in terms of what we're talking about here, can capture quite a wide range of jobs. It really depends on the size of the organization as to what your real role would be. The bigger the organization, the more likely it is that you'll be stovepiped into a very small part of the whole process. The smaller the organization, the more likely that it is that you'll be involved in the wider span of the job. But either way, you need to know how all of the process works so that you can do your job effectively. So there is a very large opportunity. If you think about a commercial business or even government, the largest employer of data analysts in Australia is actually government. So if you're looking at jobs, I would advise you to go and have a look at your local government job advertisement page and type in data analyst and have a look at the skills required. The salaries are not bad at all, so you can have a look at that. And then on the course, we really start talking about how you can build a portfolio and how you can start pivoting yourself towards a role. It's not just a course is not enough necessarily. You need to also think about obviously changing your CV to be appropriate, but you need to look at maybe taking on specific projects. Volunteering as a data analyst for volunteer organizations is also a great idea. There's plenty that can be done. So yeah, that's.
So Anne's just responded. She said that her background was with intelligence, and she enjoys analysis and the testing. Oh, she did the testing and it actually identified that data analysis would be a good route. So she's starting that next week. Great.
It'd be great to have you on, Anne. Like intelligence is a great crossover with data analysis because it's the right mindset for the skill. So I think hopefully you'll enjoy it.
Can someone get a job through with me in Australia from the USA, and how do clearances work in Oz for non-natives?
That's quite a big question. I'll probably direct you to Pathfinder team for that. Yes, I think broadly speaking, yes. We're expanding this, so we're a fairly new pathway in data analytics. As I said, there's plenty of roles out there in Australia, but roles with the company, it's a work in progress. It's going pretty well. We may very well have job offerings for veterans very soon through the company, maybe even in the next 3 months. But yes, broadly speaking, it's possible. The clearances thing is, I'm not really sure. It's a bit of a question. Yeah.
So yeah.
So I guess I'll
actually, it's quite a good mic. So
okay, nice.
Oh yeah, so you can see me.
Yeah, no.
Hey, Adam Stretch, lead pathfinder for North America here, Nate. So it is possible. While we don't guarantee job placement right now, it definitely is possible. But I haven't seen that myself. I just got out of the military December 30th. The reason we say it's possible is because we're working with the employers, with the partnerships that we have, trying to basically change the way they're assessing for employees. So we want them to hire veterans based on skills rather than just the piece of paper resume and then the interview process. So that's where we come into play. Like the courses are a good route to that. And like I said, it's not guaranteed, but it definitely is possible. And then as far as the clearances go, I'm not too familiar with that myself, but I know our RPA instructor, Kamal, he is somewhat familiar with it. And if you would like, I can reach back to you. And if I find an answer, I can shoot you an email.
Yeah, but Nate, also I suppose for you, specifically coming from the US, we've got obviously different sort of pathways for job opportunities in the US, but obviously Adam or Stretchy can talk to you about that as well, because obviously we're delivering this particular webinar out from here in Australia. Adam's actually here visiting from the US in Australia, but it's actually really cool to have him here as well, obviously, because for us, for you in particular that are here joining us, you kind of get that answer from a direct person that's going to be back in the US basically next week.
All right, I was trying to expand the video here, but
oh, you should be able to with the layout.
Oh yes, okay.
Good work.
Oh, okay.
Sorry, guys.
That's all right. That's okay. We've got some people. We had some people, just extra people, join us too.
Okay.
Ava from Fairfield West in Australia has joined us as well.
Yeah. Any more questions?
Does any? Yep. Anne's typing again.
So you can hop in there. Come on, answer it if or give them the advice.
Who's Who's the?
So Nate from the United States was asking about, is there job opportunities for US veterans if they came here and got a job in Australia, and would the security clearance actually be sponsored, I suppose? Yeah.
Okay. What am I speaking to? The microphone?
Yeah, just in the.
No, they can hear you.
Yeah, can hear you.
Good. You're good.
Okay, cool. So Nate, obviously I served in the US military as an Australian embedded officer in 101st Airborne. So my security clearance was held and approved through a partnership program between Australia and the Australian government and the US government. So it was all supported and held by Australian Embassy, and I got a US security clearance through that. However, in the civilian aspect, your security clearance when you leave US military gets held centrally. I can't remember where it gets held, but it's like, somewhere in the Pentagon or somewhere in some sort of database somewhere. And it gets held there and stored there for in case you need to use it later digitally. If you were to come over here, I believe to be working in the Australian government, you have to be an Australian citizen to hold a security clearance. There's a lot of people that come over here that are they're a permanent resident, what we call PR, and they can't hold a security clearance or they can't work in the federal government or government space because they just can't get hold of it. I think what you'd have to do is you'd have to just sort of inquire through the Australian Embassy in Washington, D.C., and just give them a ring and ask them what the process is to acquire a security clearance if you were to move over here. Being in the military, you'd be able to be tracked anyway, and it'd be easier to find you and confirm you held one. I've worked with US lateral, what we call lateral transfers, where they've come from the US military and they actually become Australian Army, Australian military, and they held security clearances. So it has been done. Is there job opportunities over here in data and automation or anything like that? Yeah, absolutely. There's plenty of data. I think we're a little bit more advanced in the emerging tech side of the world with job opportunities here in Australia than there in the US, especially in RPA and data. So, yeah, there is job opportunities.
Cool.
I can't actually see the chat anymore with that, that thing that you did.
Okay, I can.
Can you?
I believe so, yeah.
I just can't see the typing bit. Sorry, dude.
No.
Oh, chat's down here.
I hear it. Okay.
Yep. It's just lower on
Oh, yeah. I see it. Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry about this, guys.
That's all right.
Trying to get like the bar itself.
It's not letting me. No.
Oh, here it is on the left. All right. Cool.
Okay, you can see it. I can't. But if there's any more questions, guys, just feel free to put them in. Otherwise, we're happy to kind of shoot you all through the webinar, because we have recorded it. Those that came in late to the piece, but actually those that did you see both?
Oh, that's Nathan, right? I think that's Nathan. Is that Nathan Rouse?
Yeah, it is.
Right.
Nice.
So you are happy to relocate.
Okay, cool.
So we'll wrap it up.
Yeah. Awesome. All right, guys. Thank you so much. We might wrap it up. If no one else has any more questions, we'll send through all the information. Thanks so much again for joining us. Thanks for being so interactive on the chat as well and actually speaking to each other. There was a lot of people that were actually talking.
Yeah, that's great.
And introducing each other. And everyone, once again, thanks everyone for your service. And remember that you guys have so many qualities and skills that you bring into the tech space that you don't actually realize. So we thank you all for your service. And we really look forward to supporting you along this journey. Thanks, guys.
Cheers, guys. Looking forward to seeing some of you on the course. Cheers.